Hello, I'm Ryan. I'm a UX writer at Figma. And today I want to talk about the emergence of AI tools and their impact on content design. So really quick, can I just get applause from anyone who's a writer or a content designer? Okay. That's reassuring. So I know many of you aren't writers in the sense that you write end-user content, like some of us do. But you should find bits and pieces of this relevant to you, because ultimately, at the end of the day, writing is technology. And this has been true for centuries, starting with block printing in China and later the printing press in Europe, both of which made possible the mass production of written materials, followed by typewriters, which allowed individuals to create their own written works, then computers, which have allowed us to store, write, and transmit massive amounts of information across the globe. Next came word processors, which made writing powerful and super efficient with editing tools and proofreading tools. And finally, cloud-based editors, which have allowed us to collaborate in digital spaces no matter where we are. At each step, these technologies made writing more valuable, more essential, and more accessible than they were before. But they didn't just increase the proliferation of professional writing, they also spawned new specializations, ones that came about to expertly use those technologies, and others that came about to service and design them. Then, as technology evolved and became digital, the number of those specializations ballooned. So while many of those previous skills were eclipsed by new ones, the opportunity and demand for writers grew by magnitudes. And now we're on the verge of another technological eclipse. And it's created this shared anxiety that I think many of us have felt to some degree, this fear that AI will take our jobs. And it's a totally understandable concern. AI does feel kind of different than previous technologies. Those previous tools made it easier for us to write, but AI tools actually do the writing. It's now easier and faster than ever to generate content, and that's kind of prompted this question: if anyone can write, why have writers at all? But if we break these tools down to their simplest form, we can see that's not exactly what's at stake here. So at their simplest, these tools work by taking some input, using a model to generate an output, and iterating until it achieves the desired output. When we talk about AI, all the excitement centers around this part, the part where AI takes something and generates a response, because it's basically modern magic. But it's that magic that's creating the shared anxiety. And while it's technologically at the core of this new tool, I'd argue that it's really these parts of the process that matter most, the points at which the user is responsible for what happens, like the quality of the input and the feedback that they feed to the tool, and the context and expertise necessary to understand what to do with that output at all. See, I think it's not likely that AI will replace writers, because AI isn't magic. It's just a tool. And a tool, by definition, requires a user. So if we revisit this idea that AI will take our jobs, we know it's not entirely accurate, because it's really people who will take our jobs. It's people who could potentially use these tools and replace us. Now, I know that's also not super comforting, but there is an easy solution. We need to be those people. And we can be. While anyone can use a tool, it's best wielded by those with the skills and the knowledge and the expertise necessary to use it to its full potential. That's why I think it's likely that writing in the future won't look like this, some monolithic concept of AI that replaces everything that we do, but that it's more likely to look like this: a mix of new and existing jobs, ones that evolve and adapt to use these tools, and others that come about to service and design them. Now, I'm not saying we all need to be AI experts, because I think in reality, most of us will fall into this bucket. We'll continue doing what we do today, but we'll find ways to make AI tools work for us. We'll find tedious parts of our jobs and make those less time-consuming and more efficient. Now, I know this is a lot. I think it can be easy to look at all of this and feel like things are moving really quickly and like you're falling behind. But I think in truth, we're still at the very beginning of AI's evolution. I think the best part of this current moment is that there is no rulebook yet, especially not for content designers. No one's really figured out how to integrate these things into our processes yet. And it's kind of weird to say, but the tools themselves are also still learning too. So today, right now, you don't need to lean into AI and make it your personality, and honestly, don't, please. But you just need to start playing around with these things. You don't really need to know what you're doing, because none of us do yet. So I'll walk you through a couple examples of my recent work, just to give you a few ideas for how I've been using these things lately. And I'll start with how I kicked off the process to name our new colors in FigJam. as part of the updates that Dylan announced this morning. So we have these 10 new colors to go along with our new design system, and these things needed names. And because FigJam is kind of fun and playful, I wanted those names to match the same vibe. Now, the first part of any naming process is just exploration, just drumming up ideas for people to react to. So the names themselves didn't need to be perfect, but they needed to represent the overall direction well enough for the team to be able to gauge how they might work in reality. In normal times, I would have gone heads down and banged out a bunch of ideas, but this was in like the 3 weeks leading up to config, where I just did not have time. So instead, somewhat uncannily, I asked FigJam to help me name its new colors. And I used our AI generation tool that we launched last year and gave it a pretty simple prompt, just how many names I needed, the specific colors to include, and a couple of examples. And it spit out this mind map. And this is totally real. This is exactly what FigJam gave me. And if you squint, you can kind of tell, like it mixed up blueberry and bluebird. And unless something dramatic happened recently, I don't think an oyster is a fruit. But all things considered, it's pretty good. At least good enough for me to clean them up, replace the couple of duds, and send these off to my team. Because at this point in the process, I only needed rough ideas, not polished ones. Now, you'll have to wait a couple of weeks to see where we landed on this, but I like this example because it shows how useful AI can be early in a project when the stakes and the level of polish are both really low. OK, next is an example from Figma Slides, the presentation tool that we announced this morning. And I included this one because it's a case where AI was kind of accidentally helpful, and I'll show you what I mean. So since it's a brand new product, I had to write a bunch of new tooltips to help people figure out what's what. And if you look at the core UI here, you can see there's a ton for people to interact with. There's buttons, toggles, tools, menus, a ton of moments where users, especially those less familiar with Figma, might want a little bit of guidance. So I didn't have AI do this part for me. That's not the point of this. I did that part myself. I spec'd out dozens of tooltips, like I have many times before, and I handed them off to engineering, just standard procedure. Now, this could have been the end of this process, and probably should have been. But because I had been tinkering around with AI anyway, including trying to find examples for this talk, just to peek behind the curtain, I wanted to see how AI might handle the same task. So just to be clear, this was completely unnecessary, just a moment of curiosity. So I opened Claude, Anthropic's AI tool, and I gave it a screenshot, the same one that I showed you a couple of slides ago. And along with that, I asked Claude to find every piece of UI in that screenshot and write tooltips for me. And it gave me this list. Now, if you go line by line, you can see they're not like amazing. Some of them are wrong. The syntax across them is pretty inconsistent. It's not really ready to replace like an actual writer in this use case. But 2 of them did catch my eye, not because the strings are amazing or anything, but just because I forgot to write them at all. Whether it was like fatigue or ADHD, I don't know. But Claude did end up helping me here. And I know this isn't groundbreaking. Like, we probably would have caught these anyway, whether it's in a bug bash or just part of our normal processes. But I included this example because it made me realize that you kind of just have to try stuff. That how I thought this AI tool might be able to help me and how it actually ended up helping me were 2 totally different things. And that the only way to learn that difference or to understand how these tools might work for you in your own process is just to try stuff and see what happens. Also, to be fair to Anthropic, because I'm sure some of them are here, they since released a new model like 3 days ago. So even though I wrote this 2 weeks ago, this example is already out of date with how things are quickly moving. OK, my last big example is from an in-product notification audit that I ran earlier this year when I just had a little bit of time between projects. I wanted to create a list of ideas for our team to use as we discussed what to tackle next. So nothing super polished or final, just something to spark conversation. At the time, they looked something like this, just kind of your standard notifications feed if you've never seen it. And I had a bunch of these examples, just a ton of screenshots of my and my team's notifications. We'd also recently run a brainstorm with the whole design team, so I had a ton of qualitative feedback to work with as well. But I wasn't really sure what to do next. Like, I could go in and comb through all of this manually, but that would take a long time. And as you've learned, time at Figma is a premium. So to try and save some time before I dug in manually, I was kind of curious to see if AI could help trim some of this down. I didn't know if this would work, but I figured, worst case, I waste like 5 or 6 minutes trying to use this tool, and I can go back to doing what I normally do. So I opened GPT, and I gave it a bunch of those screenshot examples. And along with that, gave it this like fairly vague prompt of seeing if it could find any potential content challenges and some improvements for those things. Which, like, what does that mean? What is a content challenge? I don't know. But its response was actually pretty good. It gave me a list of 10 bullets, 2 of which you see here, of those potential content challenges with potential fixes for those things. So this is kind of cool, and now I have this framework of ideas to work with. But this was still AI's best guess. Like, this wasn't really grounded in anything. So I wanted to figure out how I could move all of that stuff in FigJam back to GPT. So I hopped back into FigJam, where I ran this brainstorm. And there's a lot here. I thought maybe I would take a bunch of screenshots and give that to GPT, but I wasn't really sure how it would handle a format like this. So instead of trying to move all of this over to a different tool, I had FigJam trim it down for me. And I used our AI summarization feature, which we launched last year, to generate this list of bullet points, just high-level thoughts from this brainstorm. Now you can see where this is going. This summary was then concise enough to take back to GPT. And I asked it to reconcile all of the suggestions that it gave me with the real qualitative feedback from this brainstorm. And the output was exactly that. So instead of all of those examples and all of those stickies, I now had this set of ideas grounded in real qualitative feedback that I could share with my team. This example is extremely convoluted, so I'm not saying this is the best idea. But the point is that you don't have to use AI tools in isolation. You can actually chain them together to create some pretty interesting combos that speed up entire parts of your process. OK, just to level set really quickly, those examples were like big and shiny, and they do not at all represent how I use AI day to day. So I want to quickly highlight a couple of the ways that are much easier to try for yourself, and also better represent the moments where I think these tools are actually helpful. So first, I use it to brainstorm all of the time. Just moments where I need to quickly generate a bunch of ideas or go for quantity over quality. In this case, I was trying to name the default font sizes in Figma slides. And I was hooked on this idea of naming them after cartoon dogs of various sizes, which in hindsight is a terrible idea. But AI did help me do it, and arguably helped me realize that it was a bad idea faster than I would have otherwise. And this is a wild example, but I really do find these useful when you're trying to go through as many ideas as possible. I also use it almost daily to learn something new, especially things that are more technical, just on the fly. A couple of weeks ago, I had to write ARIA or accessibility labels for the first time, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I opened up GPT and asked what they are, how they're different from tooltips, and some of the best practices for writing them. And I've really come to love this method over something just like Google. You can ask really specific follow-up questions and get exactly the answers you need instead of hunting around the web for them. To that point, they're also excellent at just learning how to use Figma at all. Despite working here, there's still plenty of moments where I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like this time, I couldn't figure out why my text layer wasn't hugging vertically the way I wanted it to. And GPT helped me realize it's because I set my line height to like 500 accidentally, which is big, I guess. 500 what? I don't know. But if you're a writer and you're at all curious about trying AI, just start with this use case. Instead of worrying about asking your design partners like a dumb or obvious question, just open GPT or Claude or your AI tool of choice and get the answers you need just in the moment as things come up. That'll make you a better design partner, and you'll be more powerful in your craft by moving most of what you do into Figma. OK, we're almost done. If you have to pee, we're almost there. So I think we really can put a pin in this fear that AI will take our writing jobs, at least for now. If anything, I think it's more likely that AI will just be our jobs. Most of the things that we're doing today will continue to exist, but just with some new, more efficient ways of doing things. And I understand that this can feel overwhelming. I totally get it. I shared all of this with you today not because I know what I'm doing, clearly, cartoon dogs, but because none of us have really figured it out yet, and there's still a lot for us to figure out together. But if you're still feeling anxious about where this is all headed, just try to remind yourself what we do has always been tied to technology. AI is just one new tool in a long line of new tools that's changed how we work. And just like in the past, we'll eventually crack the code on how to use it to our advantage. Thanks so much.